Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 101. We're going to talk about Sleepwalkers from 1992. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can always find links to the complete credit list in the show notes. This film was directed by Mick Garris, written by Stephen King, with special effects by Tony Gardner. Now, Mick Garris is a filmmaker, novelist, and screenwriter known for his horror genre work. He began his career in the entertainment industry as a receptionist for the Star Wars Corporation. Garris's breakthrough came in the 80s when he started writing for television shows such as Amazing Stories and Tales from the Crypt. His directorial debut came with the 1986 film Critters 2: The Main Course. Garris became associated with adaptations of Stephen King's works, directing several miniseries based on King's novels, including The Stand in 1994. Garris has made additional contributions to the horror community. He created and hosted the Showtime series Masters of Horror, which featured hour-long films by renowned horror directors. He wrote novels, short stories, and continues to be an influential figure in the genre through his podcast, Post Mortem with Mick Garris, where he interviews filmmakers and actors in the horror and fantasy fields. I'm also currently watching another Mick Garris werewolf project, the television show She-Wolf of London. I went into more detail on Stephen King when I covered Silver Bullet from 1985. I discussed Tony Gardner in the episode on Full Eclipse from 1993. The cast includes Brian Krause as Charles Brady, Madchen Amick as Tanya Robertson, Alice Krieg as Mary Brady, Ron Perlman as Captain Soames, Glenn Shattuck as Mr. Fallows, Dan Martin as Andy Simpson, Lyman Ward as Mr. Robertson, and Cindy Pickett as Mrs. Robertson. Brian Krause is best known for portraying Leo Wyatt in the popular supernatural drama series Charmed. He began his acting career in the late 80s and gained initial recognition for his role in the 1991 film Return to the Blue Lagoon, where he starred opposite Mila Jovovich. Krause has continued to work steadily in television, appearing in series such as Mad Men, Castle, and The Closer. He is still acting today with 7 upcoming projects listed on IMDb as of the filming of this episode. Madchen Amick rose to prominence in the early 90s when she was cast as Shelley Johnson in David Lynch's cult classic television series Twin Peaks at the age of 19. She's done film, but has had much more success on TV with notable roles, including appearances in popular series such as Gilmore Girls, ER, Gossip Girls, and Witches of East End. In recent years, she portrayed Alice Cooper, Betty Cooper's mom, in the hit CW series Riverdale. Alice Krieg initially pursued a career in clinical psychology before discovering her passion for acting. Krieg made her professional acting debut in the late 70s. She is perhaps best known for her roles in science fiction and fantasy productions. Her portrayal of the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact in 1996 and subsequent Star Trek series appearances earned her a devoted fan following. Other notable films that she's appeared in include Chariots of Fire and Ghost Story, both in 1981. Ron Perlman's unique features, including a prominent brow and strong jawline, initially posed challenges in landing conventional roles, but ultimately became his signature trademark. His breakthrough came in 1981 when he starred in Quest for Fire, a role requiring him to communicate without dialogue. However, it was his portrayal of Vincent in the television series Beauty and the Beast from 1987 to 1990 that brought him widespread recognition and a Golden Globe Award. Perlman became a favorite of director Guillermo del Toro, appearing in several of his films, most notably as the title character in the Hellboy franchise in 2002 and 2008. His distinctive voice have made him sought after as a voice actor for animated series and video games. In the 2010s, Perlman gained renewed popularity with his role as Clay Morrow in the television series Sons of Anarchy from 2008 to 2013. Glenn Shattuck's breakthrough came in 1988 when he was cast as Otho, the flamboyant interior designer in Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, a role that would become one of his most iconic performances. Shattuck has often collaborated with Tim Burton on projects such as The Nightmare Before Christmas in 1993 and Planet of the Apes in 2001. Dan Martin is perhaps best known for his recurring role as Deputy Chief Bradley Baker on the TV series The Bold and the Beautiful from 1997 to today. Looking over his IMDb page, he seems to have excelled at playing law enforcement officers, and he's still acting. Lyman Ward and Cindy Pickett, who played Tanya's parents, were also married in real life at the time of filming. They had met when they appeared in Ferris Bueller's Day Off in 1986, where they also played a married couple, which is probably the best known role for both of them. It also distracted me a lot watching this movie. I had to think about whether I recommended this film. The plot doesn't make a lot of sense. Character actions often don't make a lot of sense. I never had a real strong sense of why only Charles could drain the life force of the humans and why he had to feed his mother. However, it ultimately doesn't matter. This is trying to be a horror movie, and it succeeds at that. It has plenty of jump scares and quite a bit of gore. If you can turn off your inner critic, you can enjoy this film with a big bucket of popcorn. Sleepwalkers was conceived as an original screenplay by Stephen King, marking his first script written directly for the screen instead of adapting his previously published works. The film was produced by Mark Victor and Michael Grace, known for their work on Poltergeist. Interestingly, the movie features cameo appearances by several horror icons, including Stephen King himself, Clive Barker, John Landis, Joe Dante, and Tobe Hooper. Mark Hamill also has an uncredited cameo as the sheriff in the opening scene. According to director Mick Garris, Stephen King's wife, Tabitha King, wrote a treatment for a sequel that would have involved a women's basketball team. So, let's tackle the synopsis. California cops hunt for mother and son, Mary and Charles Brady, in conjunction with a mass murder of cats and the desiccated corpse of a young girl. Meanwhile, in Travis, Indiana, Charles peruses a high school yearbook like it's a menu. He selects a young lady named Tanya Robertson and then has some very icky interactions with his mom. She's placed lethal traps for the local feline population around their home. Tanya works at the local theater where Charles puts the move on her. He claims to be a new student who just transferred from Paradise Falls, Ohio. Mary is very afraid of cats. She's also obsessed with Tanya's purity. At school, Charles lays out the Sleepwalker lore by writing it up for a creative writing class. Charles gives Tanya a ride home, and they make plans to shoot photos together at the Homeland Cemetery. Mrs. Robinson gives Charles a little background grilling, which he passes with practiced ease. While driving home, Charles is stopped by his English teacher, Mr. Fallows, who attempts to blackmail Charles because there is no such place as Paradise Falls in Ohio, and Charles' transcripts are fake. Charles responds by ripping off Fallows' hand, transforming into a werecat, and murdering him. Charles drives past Sheriff Andy Simpson at breakneck speed. Charles enjoys leading the law on a merry chase until Andy's cat Clovis pops up and looks out the window. Charles' face suddenly shifts through his various forms and then back to human, which greatly surprises Andy. When Charles realizes that he isn't going to outrun Andy, he pulls off the road and makes his car invisible. Clovis can still see Charles, which unnerves Charles. When Andy finally gives up the chase, Charles turns his car from a blue Trans Am to a red Mustang and drives home. Now, cats are gathering in the Brady's yard. The cats all seem unaffected by the traps. Mary's main concern, however, is the fact that she is starving. She slaps Charles silly. It's starting again, Charles tells his mom, remembering all the places that they've tried to live but have been discovered and driven out. When is Charles going to bring her the nourishment she needs? Tomorrow, Charles promises. Charles thinks that they are the last sleepwalkers. The movie makes it very clear that mother and son are way more intimate than relatives should be. Mary is super jealous of Tanya. Tanya packed a picnic lunch, including a bottle of wine that she hid from her parents. Mary creeps on Tanya. Charles makes grave rubbings while Tanya takes photos of both the graves and of Charles. The pair start making out, and Tanya is ready to go all the way at a cemetery when Charles starts to suck out her breath. Tanya manages to smack him upside the head with her camera. That doesn't slow him down for long. When he tries again to steal her breath, she skewers his eye with a corkscrew. He's more worried about his bloody shirt. For some unexplained reason, Charles's car reverts to its original color and body style, so when Andy and Clovis drive by, Andy notices and stops to investigate. Tanya runs screaming out of the cemetery. As Andy tries to calm her down, Charles sneaks up and rams a pencil into Andy's ear. Charles attempts once again to take away Tanya's breath, but Andy shoots him in the back. Undeterred, Charles rips the gun away from Andy and shoots him with it. Just when it looks like nothing will stop Charles, Clovis leaps at Charles' head and begins scratching and biting him. Charles screams now in real fear and pain. Tanya climbs into the squad car, locks all the doors, and frantically calls for help through the radio. Charles manages to get free of the cat and speeds away in his blue car. The police arrive and investigate the scene. They don't quite believe Tanya's story about arriving in a red car and Charles leaving in a blue car. They also do not buy that his face changed, even if she is completely corroborating Andy's prior story. They do take her camera to develop the pictures she took of Charles. Charles is seriously injured and afraid that he's dying. When he gets home, his mother tries to care for him, but she's having her own troubles. The yard is full of cats. The police arrive looking for Charles. Mary makes the car, Charles, and herself invisible just as the police break down the front door. Captain Soames and the sheriff investigate the house and find nothing. Now, Tanya tries to relax in the bubble bath, but she keeps seeing Brady as a sleepwalker. Mary kills the pair of cops assigned to watch her home and goes by the Robertsons' front door, bearing a vase full of roses to apologize to Tanya. When Mr. Robertson tries to turn her away, Mary breaks the vase on the side of his head. When Mrs. Robinson rushes in from the kitchen to see what the commotion is about, Mary tosses her straight out the front window. Deputy Horace fires at Mary, but he is the worst shot I have ever seen. He returns to the kitchen to call for reinforcement, and Mary stabs him in the back with a corn cob. When Tanya comes downstairs to see what's going on, Mary knocks her out and carries her outside. More police arrive, including Soames. He yells at Mary to put Tanya down. Mary bites off 3 of his fingers and then beats him with his own arm. Using Soames' gun, she blows up 2 of the patrol cars. She tosses Tanya into the 3rd cop car and drives home. When she arrives there, she finds that her house and yard are crawling with every cat in town. I mean, there are hundreds of cats. She crashes the car into the garage to avoid the feline perimeter. Mary forces Tanya to dance with a horribly disfigured and nearly dead Charles. The police chief sneaks up. When Charles tries to feed on Tanya's breath, she pokes out Charles' eyes with her fingers. Mary rages, "You're killing him!" she screams at Tanya. Clovis and the police break in. Multiple cats rush in with them and leap on Mary. She fights them off while the policeman gets Tanya out of there. Mary catches up with them. The cop turns the traps on Mary, who kills the policeman by impaling him on a picket fence. Tanya tries to start the patrol car. Mary, now in her full werecat form, attempts to pull Tanya from the car, but dozens of cats leap on Mary. For some reason, the biting cats cause Mary to burst into flames. Engulfed in fire, Mary takes human form long enough to leap on the patrol car windshield and scream at Tanya one last time, "You've killed my son, my only son." As Mary burns up in the driveway, Clovis jumps in the car with Tanya. Tanya hugs Clovis. The other cats start to leave, there being nothing there for them. Now, remember back when I discussed Full Eclipse in 1994 and said I'd keep an eye out for a potential earlier example of CGI morphing? Yeah, here it is. 2 years earlier, and the effects are better. Don't mistake that as me saying they're good. They still look primitive compared to modern CGI-assisted transformation scenes, but they are markedly better than the effects in Full Eclipse. Tony Gardner created the transformation effects in Sleepwalkers. The Sleepwalkers' ability to shift between human and monstrous feline forms is a central visual element of the film, and it's somewhat dated by today's standards. But it showcased the creativity and skill of early 90s horror makeup and prosthetics. Having said all that, I like the hybrid makeup jobs much, much more than I like the full Sleepwalker creatures. So now let's talk about werewolf lore. First, Sleepwalkers absolutely do fit our definition of lycanthropes. They change forms into cat-like creatures and kill. The film introduces a unique mythology around the Sleepwalkers. They're ancient, possibly predating Egyptian civilization. They feed on the life force of virgin women. They have shape-shifting abilities. They can appear as human or as large, monstrous, cat-like creatures. They possess superhuman strength and some powerful psychic abilities. Cats are their mortal enemies and can see through their disguises. The Sleepwalkers' vulnerability to cats is a really interesting twist on werelore, replacing the traditional weakness to silver. Now, perhaps the greatest horror in this film isn't the violence and the murder, but instead the deeply disturbing relationship between Charles and Mary Brady, which overpowers maternal love with incestuous overtones and emotional and physical abuse. The film explores the horror of familiar bonds twisted into something unnatural and predatory, using the fictional species of shape-shifting energy vampires known as the Sleepwalkers to examine these taboo subjects in a heightened, fantastical setting. At the core of this film are the last 2 known surviving Sleepwalkers. Their relationship is explicitly incestuous, with Charles and Mary engaging in sexual behavior and relations while also maintaining a weird mother-son dynamic. This blurring of familial and sexual boundaries is presented as both a manifestation of their monstrous nature and a source of power for the Sleepwalkers. The film suggests their incestuous relationship is not just a personal choice, but a requirement of survival for their species, adding a layer of moral complexity to their actions. The dysfunctional nature of Charles and Mary's relationship extends beyond the incest. Their codependency is extreme, with Mary relying on Charles to procure victims whose life force they feed upon. The film portrays this dynamic as self-destructive, isolating Charles and Mary from society and perpetuating a cycle of violence. This deep-seated family dysfunction is exposed by Charles' budding relationship with Tanya. Her appreciation for his fictional story makes him feel appreciated and understood. His attraction to Tanya represents a desire for normalcy and a potential escape from his incestuous relationship with his mother. Charles is tired of running, tired of supporting his mother, tired of enduring her abuse, and tired of having to manage her jealousy and emotion. However, Charles' upbringing and supernatural nature make it impossible for him to fully connect with Tanya or integrate into human society. Sleepwalkers serves as a dark allegory for how dysfunctional family patterns can perpetuate themselves, trapping individuals in cycles of abuse and isolation. By framing these issues within a horror context, the film allows viewers to confront these very uncomfortable topics from a safe distance, while still conveying the deep psychological damage that such family dynamics can and do inflict. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Moonchild from 1994. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bolt in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.